Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Beth Bialco coming to you from the International Dermal Institute and Dermalogica, but actually kind of coming to you from my home office today. And so, I really wanted to reach out to you with some great information that we're going to be sharing on this episode with IDI and Dermalogica with a very special guest speaker. Especially during these uncertain times, in the past few days, few weeks, as it relates to the coronavirus, we're trying to find ways to make sure that we are staying connected to you. First and foremost, I hope everyone is safe. I hope your loved ones are safe and healthy, and you're definitely taking care of yourself during these uncertain times. And as we try to stay connected to you, we're doing things like virtual education, online content, podcast, and then these types of videos that can bring you a little bit more of information, hopefully some inspiration during this time when you're thinking about how do I just manage all of this, all these changes that are happening, not only within your business, but also within yourself. So one of the things I know as skin therapist, as massage therapist, cosmetologist, all of us love to give. We also love to be of service. And I, of course, could think of no one better than to join us on this recording today than Tiffany Louise, who is an expert in really understanding these types of ways to stress with anxiety, and cope with feelings during these changing times as well. So Tiffany, welcome to our chat today. Thank you for taking the time with us.
Thank you for having me here. And I'm so happy to be in your living rooms, supporting each and every one of you.
Yes, it's such a great time for us to be having this conversation and really reaching out in new and unique ways, right? We're not able to be face to face. We're not able to see each other in a physical component, although the 6 feet of social distancing can definitely be part of that, but ways to really connect. And I think this is really an important conversation for us to have today. So for those of you who are tuning in, just a little bit about Tiffany. She is a professional coach as well as a speaker and an author. And she's also a licensed clinical social worker. Tiffany provides coaching to not only individuals, but as well as groups. And she obtained her master's in clinical social work with an emphasis on behavioral health and has over 17 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of experience as working as a therapist and a coach in a community and clinical settings. So we're super excited to have all of your valuable information. I know you post a lot of great information on your Instagram, which is at tiffany.louise. And for those of you who get super inspired, which I know you will after our conversation today, you can also get more information about Tiffany on her website, which is tiffanylouise.com. So before I forget, and before we dive into these questions today, I know you've got a great list of ways to help people feel definitely supported during these times. As I want to say congrats on your book that you just published as well. I think it's actually a really good time for that. And your book is called This Year I Will, a 52-week guided journal to achieve your goals. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're super excited. So first question I have for you is, really this pandemic is affecting everyone across the world in so many different ways. I think for our conversation today, especially our therapists, both skin therapists, massage therapists, and cosmetologists, we're used to being in an area where our business relies on the power of touch. And now suddenly that's been taken away. And of course, our businesses have changed and the way we're communicating and connecting with our clients have changed, especially on states where it's been mandatory for salons and spas and skin centers to can shut down. So my question for you around this time is, what are your thoughts of dealing with this type of work anxiety when we're not able to really be in our place of business?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I want to say is, of course, you're feeling everything that you're feeling. If I take a pulse of like the information that we're seeing online, or, there's this, very real dynamic of stay at home. We understand the value of it and the importance of it. However, what I feel like is missing is this compassion for how hard this is. I think I see so much of this, like, don't be afraid and be productive. And while that's important, the first step is compassion. The first step is, this is real. It's significant. It is impacting your livelihood, my livelihood, so many businesses and industries. I mean, unless you're in the toilet paper business or the grocery store business, you're likely being impacted right now. And so I think the first thing is to say, of course, this is scary. Of course, there's a huge unknown here about how long this will go on, how this is impacting, your income, your financial stability, the security of your family. So yes, and allow that. And I think that's what I see is missing, because we're moving right into a couple of things that we're going to talk about, the ways in which we deal with this anxiety. But the first step is to just acknowledge, like, this is something that none of us have ever dealt with in our lifetime. The last time anything like this occurred was 100 years ago, in such a widespread way.
Right.
And just hold space for, like, yeah, we don't know how to navigate this. We've never been here before. And it can be really scary. And I think that sometimes for me, just saying that out loud lets my shoulders drop, lets my breath slow, lets me just feel like I don't have to move immediately into action. And I find, actually, and we're going to talk about this too, once we take action, this pause at the front end to acknowledge makes everything we do after that much better.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, because it is, especially if you're a doer, I'm totally guilty of this, where I feel like if I can't do something or control something, or something's affecting me in not a great way, my first reactive thing is, okay, what can I control? And push all the feelings of anxiety and stress and worry like aside, because I feel like I need to do something. So I love that, as like just acknowledging that, and that this is like, it's okay to feel like you don't know what you're doing, right? And to have like this fear kind of set in.
Because if you didn't feel fear, something would be wrong. That's the thing. I think people are pushing it out, this message that's like, don't be afraid, almost shaming people for feeling a very natural human feeling. Fear is necessary. It protects us. If you didn't have fear of buses and train tracks and lots of things, life would be very different. So I think just saying, I'm a human being and that's why I feel this fear. It's normal to feel this. And then how can I be with it in a way? Because the truth is you mentioned being a doer. When we are avoiding the truth of how we're feeling, that's when we run into problems. When we acknowledge it, and I always say, all a feeling really wants is to be acknowledged. When we can say, I feel anxious, or I feel afraid, or I feel terror of what's going to happen with my finances, something happens, because we're not wearing the emotion, we're acknowledging it. And in this little space between what we're feeling and acknowledging it, everything can happen in our lives. But when we're wearing it, we're paralyzed by it. And it's controlling us. Even though we think we're outdoing it. You can't outdo a feeling. It'll catch up with you eventually.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. It's like, you just can't outrun it. You can't outdo it. And then coming back to what you said about when you are not acknowledging it, or you start to feel paralyzed. I think there's a difference. I've heard you discuss this before, feeling, paralyzed versus feeling, panicked or productive. How does that come into play?
Yeah. So if you think of it sort of as this like linear process from an experience to an action, we have something that occurs in the environment, coronavirus, work closing down, shelter in place. And then we tell ourselves a story. We create a thought related to that experience. And then the thought creates a feeling, and then the feeling creates an action. So if we're over here, not acknowledging our fear, not making it okay, stuffing it down, and moving into other behaviors then from that place that aren't very productive. So, one of the things that we talked about covering here is the ways I see people take that stress and anxiety
Mm-hmm.
down different paths that maybe aren't the most productive or feel the best. So these are the things that I want all of us to be mindful of. And believe me, I'm practicing what I preach. I'm a human being right there with you who has an online business that requires people to feel free with their finances to invest in coaching and all of these things. So I totally understand where you are right now. And so what I see is that the 3 Ps is sort of how I'm going to outline this for you. We do
Okay.
one thing which is called perseverating. And that might sound like a fancy word, but it really means to hyper focus, to obsess, and sort of to repeat. And I see what happens is we don't feel the fear, so then we focus on, maybe it's consuming the media or whatever it is that's increasing the fear. And then 2 paths happen from here. One, we either get paralyzed from that because we
Mm-hmm.
haven't productively felt the feeling, or we can get panicked. And it's sort of like you described. We can be in panic mode and do and pressing forward and not acknowledging our feelings. And what will happen then? Eventually we'll burn out. We're
Yeah.
not operating from a place of peace and thoughtfulness and mindfulness and letting that fear allow us to be productive rather than panicked. So that's one path that I see people going. And then I see the other path is like we're afraid, we get obsessed about it, and then we shut down, we get paralyzed. This is where we Netflix and chill for far too long. This is
Yeah.
where we aren't brushing our teeth and aren't getting up. And now little bits of each path can be helpful, but if we're really looking at how do we treat our anxiety and our stress right now with the utmost care, we're asking ourselves one question: what truly feels best for me right now? And I think if you really ask your body, your mind, your spirit, does it really feel best to completely hibernate, disengage, and not be productive at all for like a solid week? Most people probably wouldn't say that's their inner
Right.
wisdom speaking.
Right.
And does it feel good to completely go into overdrive mode and not pause and listen? Most people, if they're being honest with themselves, would say no to that too. So I think if we're looking at managing our anxiety and our stress response, first, acknowledge what we're feeling. Then back to that trajectory, think about the stories that we're telling ourselves about this. And that's going to create such a different outcome in our emotions and then therefore our actions. Thoughts like, I'll never recover from this, and when my business comes back online, it won't be doing as well as it used to do. And what we want to do is say, those are normal thoughts. It's okay to be afraid, but do those thoughts feel good? Do I know that they're true? Can I reframe them and rewrite them in a way that feels more supportive, more positive, more uplifting, more hopeful? Because I think that's what a lot of us need is hope right now.
Yeah.
But we can't step into hope until we first step into the reality of what it is that we're feeling, and then
Right.
stop ourselves from being panicked or paralyzed.
Right. Right. What do you find are maybe some of the most common? I think you hit on a few right now, which is either overdo it, do nothing, or let your mind tell you stories that aren't necessarily the reality or the truth, and you kind of start to believe them. But are there other things that you feel that are common reactions during this time of, really a high level of stress? And
Yeah.
if there are, what are some of your suggestions of how, or recommendations of how people could deal with them or manage them or cope?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an experience for a lot of people. I'm talking to my clients and doing lives and other podcasts, and I'm hearing the same thing from everybody. Like,
Okay.
whatever your go-to coping mechanism is likely going to get activated right now. So I actually think there's the possibility for a lot of growth to happen right now when you get curious about the way you show up. Is it that you start, obsessing, get scared, and then lash out at your partner? Is it that you isolate? Is it that you eat your feelings and are eating in a not mindful, connected to your body way? Is it that you shut down and don't move when movement is the thing that helps in your wiser mind, helps you move the energy through? So I think it can show up in so many ways. Some people are drinking alcohol more than they normally would, or they're turning to the thing that offers the comfort. And this is what I want us to be really mindful of. We want to turn to coping mechanisms that don't make us pay a price. And this is the key thing to look for in the health of the way you cope. It's not wrong to want to check out and give your mind a
Right.
break.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with that. You need that. We can't
Yeah.
be like focused all day long. But what is the thing that you're doing to give your mind a break? Is it something that when you come back for it, there's a consequence? Or is it something that actually fills up your cup, right? Overspending, there's a consequence. But investing in FaceTime with somebody so you feel heard and seen and supported, that's a win. That's a money in your bank account, right?
Yeah.
So I think being really mindful of, are the ways I'm coping helping short term but potentially hurting long term, or are they really, getting me above red, putting money in the bank account of my self-care, which is another thing I know we're going to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think especially for our skin therapist who are thinking, if I can't be with my client, I'm not being of service, I can't do anything, I'm just going to kind of freeze or paralyze, like you said. But I love the point that you made about staying connected in other ways, because if you think about it, your clients are feeling the same way. I was thinking about this today. I'm thinking, this sounds completely probably selfish of me, but your clients are thinking, I'm not getting my hair done. I can't see my favorite massage therapist. I need my lashes touched up. What about my skin? I think they're also craving that connection with you, and just using the ability that your sound advice and your caring and mindful nature, you can still really do something powerful, even just having a FaceTime call or an email or a text. I know a lot of our businesses are doing like curbside pickup or deliveries of products, but it's just definitely that, for sure, that human connection. You mentioned self-care. So I have to jump into that because, that's been a buzz or a hot topic for the past few years. But what are some maybe vital steps or important self-care steps that someone could do during this time to kind of help manage? I know people are probably thinking like, oh, self-care, here we go again, taking a bath, is it going to help my bank account? Deep breathing, is it going to make me feel, less stressed out at this moment, or suddenly move everything back to normal? But how can we use self-care in a very mindful, wise ways that's going to give us, I think, some relief, or maybe just a moment of just being a little bit more aware personally of where we are and how we can cope?
Yeah. And I think I was just sort of thinking of the people who are on this call, like, you are people, right? People who are not people don't get into high touch industries like this. You care for people, you nurture people. And so I think, and many times those of us who are those types of people, I don't know if this is true for all of you, but we can struggle to pour that back in to us. And this might be a beautiful opportunity to practice self-care. And yes, it's not that it's not bubble baths and deep breathing, it's that, and it's more than that. And I think that's the thing to think about. We, sort of roll our eyes at like self-care because it's become such a, cliche term. But I like to broaden the scope of what self-care is. So when we think about mind, body, and spirit, and it is treating yourself in a way that you are building trust with yourself to do what is right for you. When we feel anxious and we draw ourselves a bath and we have a moment, we're trusting ourselves to give ourselves something. And so some of other examples of what self-care might be that aren't really common are boundaries, right? Boundaries with people who are depleting or who aren't uplifting. It can be boundaries with yourself to hold yourself accountable to do something that you might not feel motivated to do, but you will feel happy with the outcome on the other side. And it might be something you're putting off. It might be getting on the phone with that bill that you want to try to put on hold and advocating for yourself. That might be self-care because it's going to give you a sense of peace and relief. It might be coming up with a beautiful email campaign that you can send out right now. You might not be getting a direct, moment of sale in this experience, but it might be a moment of keeping yourself tethered to your beautiful client, saying, I want you to know how appreciative I am of all of our relationships, and I look forward to serving you when I come back. Offer them an uplifting quote, pour something in to them, that might end up being something that's pouring into you, because it's preparing yourself for, when you're re-entering into the workplace. So I think broadening our definition of what self-care is, and asking ourselves, what do I need to do to be the best steward of myself? And what are those actions? And it's not always the fun things. Sometimes it's holding ourselves to doing the tough stuff that is good for us.
Yeah. No, I think that's I think it's such a good point that you made too, is that it's the nice things that make us feel relaxed and comfortable, but then also to finding ways to really just move yourself, propel yourself forward. I also find that even self-care can kind of, I mentioned like the relaxing component of it. And I think that's not exactly the word I'm looking for, but just kind of that little bit of softening of your mind, because then you're a little bit more open to, okay, what do I really need to do? Yes, I need to go through my client files, my consultation cards. I need to think about inventory, or all the things that are kind of like not necessarily, like you said, not necessarily the fun things to do. And, just honestly, sometimes I think it's just giving yourself a break, just giving yourself a moment to just really stop and think as well. You mentioned kind of the here and now, where we are with kind of dealing with everything, but there is going to come a point where that, the light's coming in, the fog will be lifted, and we will be moving back into, our time of business, our time of service to our clients as well. And I think there could be some stress around that, because when you're going back to a business that you've had to step away from, it may not necessarily be the same as when you left. Yeah. So what are some things that you could think of how someone could maybe start preparing for that thought process as well? Would be really great.
Yeah. And I think we can do a couple of things. We can use the time now to really take care of ourselves, so that many times when you're working with your body and you're feeling the energy of your clients, and you're busy, in work, we don't get the opportunity for self-care. I saw a quote the other day that said, "This is the pause that you prayed for."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And so many of us are like, if only I could have some time, right? So I think nurturing ourselves, filling our tank in every way we can, not letting the anxiety rob us of that opportunity, because we will one day come back to some sense of new normal, right? And so imagining how you want to feel when that time comes, laying the groundwork for that right now. I also think some of the things, and I have a lot of friends who are huge in the branding business and are teachers of online businesses and real life businesses. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of people say are plant seeds also now to nurture those relationships, so that when you do re-enter, they're there, and you've stayed on their radar screen, and you've reminded them of this like nurturing relationship that you have with them. So send the emails, reach out, and if you feel comfortable in saying, hey, I'm just checking in, hoping all is well, stay on their radar, so that when life comes back to normal, you're top of mind. And I also think this is where we can do the work that we can do to take care of what we can, and then practice this exercise of acceptance and surrender for what we don't know, right? We can prepare all day long, but this could happen in a month, or it could happen in 6 weeks. We don't know the timeline, and we don't know what the impact this will be to the industry and to people's pocketbooks, and how they're going to show up as our clients in the future. But it's saying our anxiety is diminished when we do what we can, and we know that, and then we can have peace with that, and then we practice the art of surrendering the outcome. Because that's the piece when we try to control it, that's sand through our fingers. That's stuff that we don't have the power to handle. So prepare yourself, envision how you want to feel, use this time to pour into your cup, because anytime you're pouring into you, you're pouring into your business, and you're pouring into your future client interactions. So that would be what I would recommend.
Okay. That's great. I love that. I love the, the connection, and just really staying, with your loved ones, your family, your friends, but also to your clients, and pouring into yourself. I think that's super, super powerful as well. You had mentioned also that, when you're getting ready to kind of, you're making a plan, and like you said, this could happen in a month. You could be back, we could be back in, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. I think that also too I noticed, has triggered some anxiety with people I've talked to, which is, when is this going to happen? Like, what do I do? Like, I feel like I'm just kind of waiting and not knowing like what to, how to be prepared. Is there something that someone could do to kind of ease that kind of feeling of the unknown, or
Yeah.
when they're getting ready to get back into it, or when the time will come where things will seem better?
Yeah, and I think that's the reality that we're all being faced with.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get philosophical for a moment, I think what this is causing us to face is the uncertainty that we actually live with every day, but we just don't know it, right?
Yeah.
This like
Yeah.
powerlessness over many things in this life, but what we do have power over, the one thing is how we think and what we do. And so I think the best way to manage that, and that's anticipatory anxiety, and that's actually a different kind of anxiety because we don't even know what to anticipate. It's
Right.
anxiety over the unknown.
Right.
So one, like we've been talking about this whole call, label it. When we're in it, but we can't see it, we're not conscious. But
Right.
it sounds so simple and you're like, what a therapist thing to say. But truly just acknowledging like, I am afraid because I don't know what's going to happen and the timeline and what's the real fear, right? Will I be able to pay my bills and will it be the same when I come back? These are all very real things. So acknowledge the fear and then
Mm-hmm.
say, what can I do about it now?
Okay.
Do what you can do about it now, and then let go of the rest, because that's the practice I think that this is inviting us into,
Mm-hmm.
is this surrender to, recognizing that we aren't as in control as we think we are,
Mm-hmm.
and the only thing that we can control is those things, our thoughts and our actions. And that's what I think this is inviting us to work on,
Yeah.
to pause, to say, thinking about what my finances are going to be in 12 weeks isn't productive, but calling all of my, you know, bills and lenders or whatever it is, and getting creative and budgeting in this way, and maybe stopping this, subscriptions, and that is where our agency is present. And then
Mm-hmm.
we do everything that we can, and then we surrender what we can't, and we
Yeah.
trust that we will be provided for. And I know this is a little, spiritual in tone, but I think that's really what we're being asked to step into, is
Mm-hmm.
an ability to take care of ourselves and then trust that if whatever comes to be that we're anxious about, we will meet it when it comes. But right now, all we can do is meet what we can meet.
Right, right. Really acknowledge it, and then seeing what can I do at this time to really understand it, take care of it, or deal with it, or, and like you said, get creative, but not get critical of
And
yourself.
not allow that panic to turn into shutdown, because
Mm-hmm.
then we've all
Wow.
been there, right? We put
Oh
off
yeah.
that funny
Sure.
meme where it's like, you great, the thing I've been putting off for 2 years took me 15 minutes to do.
I
Right?
know.
And so
Right.
all that avoidance does is build anxiety. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to meet the feeling so we can actually show up to it instead of avoid it, because avoiding only multiplies what it is that we're
Yeah,
working.
absolutely. Well, Tiffany, this has been a great time to spend with you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, really just tuning in and giving us just, I think another way, an insight to look at things, and all of the bits of wisdom and guidance and support that you're giving us. So I definitely thank you so much for your time and for being here. We really appreciate just you just sharing your service to so many others who will be tuning into this today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sending love and light and prayers to each and every one of you. And I can tell you that I can't wait to get back to my gals. Can't wait
Right.
to get back to my providers. They're treasured relationships in my life. And so I know that the people who work with you are feeling the same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And you too, stay safe and healthy. and take caring of yourself and your loved ones. And we'll definitely stay in touch. And again, you guys, if you are definitely feeling inspired, which I know I am, and staying connected with this, you can definitely hear more guidance and support from Tiffany on either her Instagram, Tiffany.Louise, at Tiffany.Louise, or you can go on to her website, tiffanylouise.com. So, all right. Thank you so much. You guys take care of yourselves.